We are live. We are live. I hope we are live. Welcome to the live show, Monday, November 7th. Peek around the corner. College football's peek around the corner with your host, Greg Flugar. Lots to talk about this evening. And again, like always, on a live show, you are the ones who direct our episode tonight. You are the ones that direct our live show. Whatever you want to talk about. And my goodness, there's lots to talk about. Now, of course, like always in our live show, I start with this big old monologue, what I want to talk about. But then after that, you guys take off, put down your comments in the comments section, and we'll discuss it. I first want to start off by talking about the football games that just happened. Tennessee Volunteers lose to Alabama. We have to talk about the aftermath of Week 10. Tennessee gets blown out by Georgia. I didn't think that was going to happen. Georgia actually got a pass rush on Hendon Hooker. And that was all Georgia Bulldogs. Tomorrow night, they should move up to the number one team in the country, the number one team in the nation. Once again, I would not have any problems with that. I think the Buckeyes, Ohio State, even though they struggled against Northwestern in that horrible weather in Evanston, Illinois, I think the Buckeyes will be number two. LSU, big win against Alabama. We talked about it. Alabama just don't have that juice this year on offense. And LSU improving every week. They won that game in beautiful fashion. Brian Kelly, I don't like the guy's personality, but the guy can coach. We talked about at the start of the season. He's got that wide receiver room starting to play. He has five new starters on the offensive line. 2 true freshmen on the right tackle and left tackle. And look what LSU is doing. A great job by Brian Kelly. Louisville, Clemson next week. Well, Clemson just lost. We talked about at the start of the season. DJ Uiagalelei just wasn't going to be the guy that's going to propel Clemson to the playoffs. Now, they probably are still the favorites to win the ACC, which I didn't think was going to happen. So I was wrong. But because I had North Carolina State, I thought there was going to be their year with Devin Leary, but that didn't work out. So Clemson, still the favorites to win the ACC. But they've been pretty well eliminated, I believe, from getting into the playoffs. Other teams haven't, like Oregon. They have worked themselves back in it. There's been quite a few things wrong I got at the start of the season with my predictions. But I haven't got anything more wrong than Bo Nix. I did not think he was going to have this type of season. I saw him play at Auburn for 3 years. I saw him lose to my beloved Minnesota Golden Gophers in the Outback Bowl in 2019. He couldn't make the plays. He could not make the plays. He was like a low 50% completion percentage guy. And now look what he's doing. Kenny Dillingham, the offensive coordinator for Oregon. To my Oregon Ducks who watch this show, the Ducks, the fan base, enjoy Dillingham because he's either going to be the new Arizona State head coach or he's going somewhere soon. That guy's a prodigy, 32 years old, incredible mind, incredible maturity. I think he's going to be leaving Oregon soon. We shall see, we shall see. But Oregon's worked themselves back in it. And they play Washington Huskies. I believe it's 7 o'clock Eastern time. Fox. I think it's on Fox. Oregon versus Washington. Huge game. Alabama has to play Ole Miss. But Alabama, I think we can all finally say they are done. I did not like last Tuesday. If you watched this show live, I got really upset. That Alabama was ranked ahead of TCU because Alabama, they just don't have it this year. Not on offense. They don't have it. We got a big Wisconsin-Iowa game. We got Illinois, Purdue game. Minnesota plays Northwestern. Big Ten West, suddenly there's a race. Illinois was in the catbird seat. They still are. but they lost the game against Michigan State. Illinois was favored by 16 points. What happened? What happened, Fighting Illini fans? Come into the comments section. Let me know. I do believe that Ted, I think Ted's coming into the comments section. I hope he gets here. Let me know what happened to the Fighting Illini. Chase Brown had a big fumble in that game. Tommy DeVito just wasn't himself. Illinois defense was tough at first, but they gave up some big plays. Jaden Reed made some big plays, Michigan State wide receiver. We got UCF in Tulane, big American Athletic Conference game. 25th rated UCF gets 19th rated Tulane. That's going to be a big one. Georgia, the number one team in the country. I think they will be tomorrow night. The number one team in the country. They play Mississippi State. TCU at Texas. TCU at Texas. Let me know anybody. Put your comment down. Let me know if the audio's good, if the visual is good. Let me know if we're okay. We never know about these live shows. Something could go off, so just let me know. Give me a hint if we're okay or not. TCU, Texas. Gary Patterson, TCU's former coach. The coach that helped them into prominence, the Horned Frogs, for their about 20 years. He's doing some advising work, analyst work for the Texas Longhorns. Huge game for TCU. A huge game for that program. Sean Singh says, everything is good. Thank you, sir. I appreciate your comment. Everything is good. All right. Don't have to worry about that anymore. So, those are the games for next week in the aftermath of Week 10. Number 1, Georgia tomorrow night. Number 2, Ohio State. What do you guys think? I think Tennessee will probably stick with number 4, TCU. But number 3, number 4, Michigan. Number 3, number 4. What do you all think? Let me know in the comments, down in the comments section below. We can talk about the games from last week. We can talk about the games coming up like we just did. We can talk about UCLA. UCLA. Their Big Ten fate is going to be decided between November 15th and November 17th when the Pac-12 has their meetings. George Kliavkoff off base, but then University of California Regents has their meeting in San Francisco 15th to 17th. That's when they decide. Supposedly. It's on their list of things to discuss, and I think it's an action item. UCLA. What are they going to do? What do you think they're going to do? They've got 3 options. I suppose they got 4. But the 3 options are do nothing at all. Just let UCLA go to the Big Ten 2024. No strings attached. Second option is penalize UCLA for going to the Big Ten. Penalize them. Toll tax them. We use the term toll tax to travel to the Big Ten. Every year, you're going to siphon off money from UCLA that they get from the Big Ten. You're going to get that money. You're going to give it to University of California, Berkeley. A toll tax, a penalty, just for UCLA making the decision to go to the Big Ten. And there's reports out there, more than one, that UCLA's chancellor actually told University of California, Berkeley's Board of Regents president that they were going before it was announced. He gave the president, the Board of Regents president, a heads up. So now we're getting reports that the University of California Board of Regents, we did an episode on it this morning. If you want to go back and watch episode 88, peek around the corner. An article, John Wilner. It's either by Wilner or Joe Casano. This one was Wilner. Anyways, Board of Regents. They could also block UCLA. Not just penalize them, but just block them from going to the Big Ten. Without even having a vote of the full Board of Regents, the full board. The top 2 people can just end it. Just block. And they don't even have to announce it in public. They just make the announcement. Maybe it comes out. UCLA leaks it. We don't know. But it could be done just like that. Now, many people think UCLA won't, or the University of California Board of Regents won't just do that. Won't just block them. But maybe they penalize them to the point where it's so crippling that UCLA can't even make the move to the Big Ten. The toll tax on UCLA and give that money to University of California, Berkeley. Or they can do nothing at all. Let me know, first of all, in the comments in the comment section. I will get to them. I will get to your comments after I'm done with the monologue. Please smash that like button if you like our content. Please share the video with your family and friends and subscribe to our ever-growing channel. If you want to donate to our channel to keep the lights on, you can hit that super chat button, put your comment up. We'll put it up right away. We'll do a deep dive on your comment, even if you're ripping your humble host, Greg Flugar. Okay? All right. But please put your comment down whether you believe, what do you think is going to happen? What will the University of California Regents do? And then I also want to know what you all think about what would the Big Ten do if the Board of Regents, University of California Board of Regents, actually blocks UCLA to go to the Big Ten. What would be the Big Ten's next step? First, I want to let you know what I think would happen. We have no intel on this, by the way. Matt Higgins brings up a question regarding UCLA. Has BTM said anything about Warren Plan B if UCLA is blocked? No, he hasn't. Not at this point. Not at this evening. But believe me, we are talking about it. We are discussing it. I asked him that question, Matt. We have no information. Once we do, if we get good intel, we'll do an emergency live program. That's why it's important that you all subscribe to our channel so you get notified of that. Now, this is what I think the Big Ten would do. First of all, in the episode of today, this morning, if you missed it, go back to episode 88. First of all, Oregon and Washington, don't sign anything. Don't sign anything that has Pac-12 name on this sheet of paper. Don't sign any media deal. Now, of course, they don't need my advice on that. I'm being overly dramatic. But don't sign anything. There is some, because you don't know what the University of California Board of Regents is going to do. I mean, when this started out, when this whole event started out, when there was talks about Governor Newsom being upset and all this, and that the Board of Regents wasn't notified, and Newsom's part of the Board of Regents of University of California school system, I poo-pooed the whole thing. I said it's not going to get to this point where UCLA is going to get blocked or even penalized, toll tax. I was wrong. I was absolutely wrong. Even between November 15th and 17th, if University of California Board of Regents comes out and says, we won't do anything, UCLA, you're free to go. I was still wrong because I didn't even think it would get to this point where there would even have to be a decision made or announcement made. I didn't even think this was even in the question. So, but this is what I think would happen. I think Kevin Warren, and even though we don't have any intel, Matt Higgins, you know they've got something planned out. They will go right back. Kevin Warren, the Big Ten presidents, along getting themselves with Fox, would go right back and grab at least a 16th school. And it would come from Pac-12 country. They've got this huge media rights, this huge deal created with NBC, ABC, CBS, Peacock with telecasting games, 8 games. Then you got all the basketball. You got this huge deal for 6 years. Now they might have to make some adjustments if UCLA is blocked to go to the Big Ten and a school like Oregon or a school like Washington or a school like Stanford is added. Maybe a minor adjustment because maybe in theory Big Ten won't dominate the whole Los Angeles market. But they're grabbing a 16th school. They definitely are. And maybe they would even bludgeon the Pac-12 and go for the 17th and 18th school. They're going back there. It's not like it's not like the Big Ten. This is my heavily guarded opinion. I want to hear yours in the comments section. That's why we're doing this live show. But no way is the Big Ten just going to sit back and do nothing. That's why Oregon and Washington, man, they've got, come on, they can't sign anything. And then one more bit of news. We talked about the games from last Saturday, games coming up this Saturday, UCLA, which we're going to be talking heavily tonight, San Diego State. We've had a couple episodes that peek around the corner. The last one saying the perfect storm is brewing for San Diego State. And we laid out all the reasons why. Man, if you're an Aztec fan, if you're a fan base, if you're an alumni, if you're just a fan of the team from San Diego, what have you, it couldn't be laid out any better for your university. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean your school is going to get a Power 5 invite. And we're going to talk about what Dan Patrick said on the show this morning. So it's not a lock. It's not a 10-star lock that San Diego State's going to get that invitation that they're hoping for from either the Pac-12 or the Big 12. But you couldn't have it laid out any better. The mere threat of the Big 12 being able to take on San Diego State, just the threat, just the perceived threat. Maybe they can't do it. The pro rata clause that's in the Big 12 media contract doesn't include the G5 school, doesn't include San Diego State. So that's a heavy hurdle to jump over for San Diego State to get an invite for the Big 12. It's a heavy hurdle for Brett Yormark, the Big 12 president, to be able to grab San Diego State. But still, it's not a kill shot. I don't think, peeking around the corner, we don't think it's a kill shot for San Diego State to be able to get into the Big 12. But just the threat of that has to make Pac-12 act on it. We had a report from Joe Casano saying that the San Diego State and the Pac-12 is dancing. I completely believe that. Because there's a dance before they get married. There's a dance. There was a dance with UCLA and USC for quite a period of time. There's a dance. And the mere threat of the Big 12 coming through the back window on the Pac-12 and grabbing that Southern California market, the 1.2 million homes, that threat, that's the perfect storm for San Diego State. Now, Dan Patrick this morning said on the show, according to a source, that San Diego State could be a part of the Pac-12 by the end of this week. A lot of people have reported on, I'll get to your comments in a moment here. I apologize. This is how our live show starts. I do a long monologue and then we go with your comments for the rest of the evening. The timing isn't right. The timing isn't right for San Diego State to get an invite. And that's been reported elsewhere, and that was my first thought. The timing doesn't work. Not for right now. Because, first of all, again, we have this UCLA thing hanging over everybody's heads, especially UCLA. But Oregon and Washington, man, they're not making any... They're not going to make any... they're not signing nothing, okay? And they're not going to sign on to San Diego State to become a member of the Pac-12. And George Kliavkoff has been saying for weeks, and it makes sense. It has always made sense. This is one of the things that George Kliavkoff has said that does make sense. Pac-12 is going to get their media deal done first. Get it done first. And then look at possible expansion. So the media deal is not done yet, as far as we know. So I just think for those two reasons and other reasons, I don't think San Diego State getting an invite by the end of this week for the Pac-12 is in the cards. However, this is the perfect storm for San Diego State to finally get that Power 5 invite. So that's my spiel on UCLA's situation, on the San Diego State situation. The games from last week. Games coming up this week. And the Big Ten compromise. Is there a Big Ten big compromise brewing inside the conference for the future schedule of 2024? And what do you think about it? In other words, ladies and gentlemen, the Big Ten is actually thinking of having the schools not have all the same amount of permanent rival games each and every year. Iowa could have their 3, and Penn State could have just 1. USC could just have 1 against UCLA, if UCLA's in the conference. Some schools could have 3 permanent rival games each year. Some schools could have 2. Some schools could have 1. Let me know what your thoughts about that. I'm very leery of that great compromise that possibly is happening within the Big Ten because they can't agree. They can't agree. The larger these conferences get, we always talk about the positives about these conferences getting bigger and bigger. We never talk about the negatives, or sometimes I do, because we're a rebel YouTube channel, right? No strings attached. The larger they get, the harder it is to keep it together. Realignment never sleeps. It's harder to keep unified, a unification of all the schools. So this might be the great compromise to get Penn State on board, to get Iowa on board, and everyone in between on board. I'm nervous about the whole thing. So let me know your thoughts on that. Let's get to your comments. Enough of me babbling. Let's get to your comments. T-Duck, isn't UCLA already tied to the Big Ten with a Gore, with the grant of rights? That's a good question. That's a good question. I only can answer this, T-Duck. If the University of California Board of Regents blocks UCLA, actually blocks them, or penalize them to the point where they can't move to the Big Ten, and the UCLA stays in the Pac-12, does the Big Ten go to court? Do they sue? Because there's a contract signed. That's a good question, T-Duck. I don't have the answer. I'm assuming that grant of rights is not signed by UCLA. But it's just a speculation. I do not know for sure. I think that grant of rights would come into play once it starts, once that new media contract starts. Because obviously UCLA hasn't turned over their individual media rights to the Big Ten because they haven't started with the Big Ten. So I would go with the answer of no, but I'm not sure on that. Great question. Sean saying, if Cal ever wants in the Big Ten, wouldn't they want UCLA lobbying for them? You would think so, but okay, so you're asking me, and we at Peek Around the Corner, we've never agreed with other national reports out there that California was ever a candidate for Big Ten expansion. So, look, California, great school, number 1 or number 2 public school in the country. We get all that. We've been through that before. A great market in theory, great demographics, huge population, just a fantastic research school. But their intensity, their fan base intensity for that market is very shallow. Would they buy the Big Ten network, the fan base? We don't think so. So I don't know if UCLA lobbying for them or not lobbying for them. From our perspective, it wouldn't make any difference because University of California, we don't think it's going to become a Big Ten school. We think there's still a chance Stanford will. We have never gotten any steam about University of California. We did get steam from Washington, Oregon, Stanford. We did. We talked about it through the months, through that decision window between August 15th and October 15th of a go or no go for launch for further Big Ten expansion. All through that window, constant communication with our associates, them talking to their people. We never got any California steam. So I'm going to say it doesn't matter. That's my answer, Sean. University of California, we don't think it's going to become a Big Ten school. Other people disagree with us. I get it. Not a problem. Market X next. Thanks for joining us here at Peek Around the Corner. If UCLA gets blocked, does SC still come? I think they will. Just add Berkeley to appease the Board of Regents. USC is coming. USC is coming to the Big Ten. When we broke that news here at Peek Around the Corner on March 31st that USC called the Big Ten, you go right through our tweets through those 3 months. Man, there was a lot of information we didn't even put out because we knew we had gotten the message out and the people that needed to know. There was a lot. USC wanted in for all the reasons we said, to get above that stratification line, to get above that revenue line so they could compete in the new world of college sports, which is going to be consumed by direct deposit, more compensation from the student athletes coming directly from the conference or the schools. We went through all that. USC knows the real world is coming. They get it. So does Oklahoma and Texas. That's why they left the SEC. They get it. Everyone gets it. UCLA gets it. They're running into some political hurdles at the Board of Regents, University of California, and the governor of California. That's the problem. No, USC is still coming. Think they just add Berkeley to please the Board of Regents? Well, first of all, personally, I say no way, right? No. Second of all, we've talked about it. University of California. Would they even buy the Big Ten Network? Would they even watch Big Ten sports? The consumer base out there? I don't think so. Thirdly, this is not the way to go about blackmailing the Big Ten. Like going out in public like this. The Big Ten isn't going to bend their knee, go on bended knee, I should say, to University of California. That's just not how it works. Not how it works. I don't think so. That's my answer to that. Tony, tough Tony. Nice to see you, sir, once again. I'm sure UCLA's lawyers will have an opinion. Just because the Cal board says they have the power doesn't mean they do. Look, I'm not a lawyer. I just play one and peek around the corner. No, I don't. Yeah. Well, we're going to find out a lot, aren't we? Between November 15th and 17th. And it has to happen. A decision has to be made. I mean, George Kliavkoff wants a decision to make. How can he possibly even negotiate, have real firm negotiations with potential new media companies, media partners, when he's sitting there not even knowing if the California Board of Regents is going to block UCLA or cripple UCLA, penalize them to the fact that UCLA would have to go back to the Big Ten? How does he even negotiate? And how does the media parties even know that they should negotiate with the Pac-12? If the whole thing in Washington and Oregon, like we said in our episode this morning, my goodness, why would they even sign anything with the Pac-12? Wait on this. Just wait. I'm at the point we have no idea what the University of California Board of Regents is going to do. It's so odd. The whole thing is so odd. Why you would cut the knees out from under one of your most prestigious, beautiful, successful research and athletic universities just to penalize them for doing what they felt they needed to do in this new world of college sports. It's incomprehensible to me. It's just my opinion, strongly held opinion. The lawyers from UCLA, I made this comment in the episode this morning, in episode 88. If UCLA actually was blocked, and they had to come back to the Pac-12, and then Big Ten took, let's say, Oregon in its place, or Stanford, or Washington, just take one of those things. Let's just say that actually happened. Would UCLA ever recover from that? Would they? I mean, look, some of those UCLA boosters Like the top one, I don't want to say his name here on this channel. Begins with the letter W. They want this to happen. This whole notion, they want UCLA to go to the Big Ten. This whole notion that there are people out there who have never talked to anyone at UCLA who is for the Bruins going to the Big Ten, that's not reality. Let's be blunt. That's not true. Of course that's not true. Because there's boosters that want UCLA to go to the Big Ten. Do you think in this world of NIL, name, image, and likeness, where boosters are setting up these collectives and everyday fans are setting up these collectives that help raise the compensation of their alma mater school, their student athletes, to raise their compensation, the name, image, and likeness collective deals? Do you think these boosters want to double dip and take their money and put it in the NIL and then keep loading into the UCLA's athletic department at the same time? They don't. They don't. They don't. That's why USC did this move to the Big Ten, because they knew what was coming down the road. They don't want to put all their money into supporting the athletic department with their facilities and everything, and then be asked extra money to support the NIL collectives. They want to go NIL. They want to do other things with their money and have that large media money, the Big Ten, take care of the rest for UCLA to compete at the highest level in sports other than just college football. Anyways, getting off track. We'll go to your comments in a second. Please smash that like button. Share the video with your family and friends. Please, and subscribe to our channel. Thank you so much. If you want to contribute to the channel to help keep the lights on, hit that super chat button, that $sign, or you can contribute to Venmo, PayPal, the ticker going across the screen. Thank you so much. Daniel, Mr. Hoosier, brother from another mother. By the way, Daniel, I need your Hoosiers to defeat the Purdue Boilermakers at the end of the season. I know you guys are down a lot of players due to injuries, but I need you guys to beat the Boilermakers, okay, for my beloved Gophers. All right. I think Kliavkoff was referring to the California system imposing a tax in UCLA if they moved to the Big Ten as the reason it would lose money by going to the Big Ten. You know what, Daniel? I read that over and over again. He never brought into the fact that wasn't what he laid out in his comments in the Kazano-Wilner interview and other reports. He said that UCLA wouldn't make more money in the Big Ten because of increased coaches' salaries, of increased travel, increased administration, yada, yada, yada. But I would agree with you, Daniel, that he's hoping, that he's thinking that tax, that toll tax in UCLA would cripple them to the point where once UCLA adds it all up, that they have to go back to the Big Ten. I think that's what Kliavkoff is hoping for. I don't know. There's something really underhanded about all this. Kliavkoff, Board of Regents asking for Kliavkoff to write them a letter on what they should do. Kliavkoff writes a letter. I just think the whole... Sean, could see Big Ten taking any of the three. I think you're referring to Washington, Oregon, Stanford. Yes, I do. I think there's a strong argument for any of those three. Strong argument for all those three. Daniel, I think the Big Ten was smart enough to game plan moves and have something up their sleeve should the Regents block UCLA. I think it's the dumbest thing that Kliavkoff, the Regents, could do. I agree. I absolutely agree. The only thing I can think of, Daniel, that the reason why Kliavkoff is putting so much marbles, putting all of his chips, I should say, in the middle of the table. And risking a lot. I mean, risking his credibility, saying that UCLA wouldn't make as much money if they joined the Big Ten. Patently false statements. The only thing I can think of, Daniel, is that George Kliavkoff has received the numbers from ESPN and maybe at this point Amazon. But let's stick with ESPN. He has received the numbers of what the Pac-12 would get if they could maintain part of the Los Angeles market with UCLA, and the numbers that would say the numbers, he got the numbers from ESPN where they wouldn't be able to retain part of the Los Angeles market. In other words, UCLA goes to the Big Ten. And that those numbers, those two sets of numbers, are wide apart. And that's why George Kliavkoff is pushing all of his chips in the middle of the table. That's the only thing I can think of. Because the whole thing is a desperation play. And he's losing credibility because when he goes out and says UCLA wouldn't make more money joining the Big Ten, man, that's very tough on a guy's credibility when you go out and say that. But look, maybe he doesn't have any more hands to play. He's got a 2-7 offsuit. He's playing Texas Hold'em. He doesn't have anything. He's down to his last chips. And maybe that's why. Washington, Oregon, Stanford. Yep, that's what I thought you meant, Sean. Daniel, I could see 6 other schools to create a bridge, go directly to DEFCON 5, take Oregon, Washington, Stanford, Colorado, Arizona, Utah. You've always been that type of guy, Daniel. You've always gone to DEFCON 5. Just kidding you. There's not enough money for all that. There's too much dilution. Big Ten presidents would, I think you're half joking. I don't think the Big Ten presidents would ever do that, of course. I think if I had a bet on it, if UCLA was blocked or crippled to the point where they couldn't make the move to the Big Ten, which seems outrageous, but who knows what that Board of Regents is going to do. I would say Big Ten grabs the 16th school, be it Oregon, Washington, or Stanford, and I think there's great arguments for any of those 3. And I'm not just bailing on that tough question. I really think there's legit, huge reasons to take one of those 3. Each of those schools have a lot going for them to become the 16th Big Ten school if UCLA gets blocked. The other option of UCLA being blocked, going 16, 17, 18, you include all those 3. I'm not sure how much of that is truly in play. I think the heavy favorite is Big Ten would take a 16 school. But Oregon has that huge brand, and Fox Sports, they would sign off on that. They would sign on to Oregon being the 16th school. Remember, Fox Sports was a huge proponent. They wanted UCLA and USC. They jumped all over this when USC and UCLA both called the Big Ten. Separately, they called the Big Ten. So maybe Fox Sports would say, okay, we lost UCLA. This is terrible. Let's go ahead. Big Ten, you're suing, da-da-da. But for now, let's take the next biggest brand on the board, which is Oregon, which is actually a bigger brand than UCLA. But they don't have the market, but Oregon's a huge brand. So Oregon has a lot going for them. People on Twitter, people on message boards, always wants to downplay Oregon's value. They got huge value. And then you got Washington. This huge mammoth, gigantic market, huge research school, very big brand. You can see Big Ten taking Washington like that if UCLA gets blocked. And of course, Stanford, private school, wouldn't have any problems with wouldn't have any problems with the politics of California, and taking Stanford, that's what the Big Ten presidents would want, and you kind of take a shot, right, a rib shot to California because you're taking away Stanford, their partner in crime. So each of those schools have legit reasons to think that they would be the 16th school taken. Remember, we know that Oregon and Washington had discussions with Big Ten officials. That was reported by Brett McMurphy and others, confirmed by others, independently from us. And we got our own intel, and we let you all know. Oregon, episode 52, Washington, another episode. And those meetings wouldn't have taken place if Big Ten didn't have any interest at all. It would have never gotten that far. Big Ten's not sitting there having meetings with all these Pac-12 schools. Not preliminary meetings. That's not how it works. So Big Ten has all the information they need on Oregon and Washington and Stanford. But particularly Oregon and Washington. So if UCLA gets blocked, Big Ten's just not going to sit there. And does that really help UCLA? Does that really help the University of California, Berkeley? Does that really help the California school systems? I don't get it. I don't get it. But again, the only thing I can think of is George Kliavkoff got two set of numbers from ESPN and possibly Amazon. One with UCLA still in the Pac-12. Still, Pac-12 has some of that Los Angeles market. And the other number without UCLA, and those numbers are far, far apart. And so this is worth the gamble for George Kliavkoff. Okay. Sean, I don't get the Pac-12's commissioners thinking. If not UCLA, then it's going to be another Pac-12 branch school. Correct. I believe so as well. Market text, not letting UCLA go is a death sentence for the athletic department. Less revenue, more debt, and the Pac-12 is toast anyway. Yeah, I think you're just weakening UCLA. If you don't let UCLA go, they're weakened. Right? If you don't let UCLA go, does that really help University of California, Berkeley? No, it doesn't. Danielle, great comments. It's absolutely great comments. We always get great comments. Peek around the corner. You guys, once again, live show, you direct what we talk about. Always. Always. I know. I have my huge monologue that everybody falls asleep on at the start of the show. But you guys direct the show. We take any questions. Tough Tony. Big Ten, turn your back on the state of California. Take Oregon, Washington, and Utah. Very well could be done. Utah, an emerging brand. Great, intense fan base. Utah Utes fan base, the alumni. They would buy the Big Ten network. They would go to the football games. Utah fans would watch Saturday night, 6:30 in the evening, Michigan State versus Illinois. They would watch some of the Big Ten games because Big Ten country watches Big Ten events. Yes, Utah is an emerging brand. So, that's the way I would go, but I don't think Utah is in play right now. I don't think Utah is in play right now for that 16th school. Definitely not. If it goes 16, 17, 18, if UCLA gets blocked, would Utah move up ahead of Stanford? I'd say it's a long shot, but I think it's a live shot. We talked about that many episodes ago. We talked about why Utah, and similarly Arizona State, but especially Utah, is a live long shot on the board. But we're going to find out. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to find out. We're going to talk about this, but we're going to find out November 15th and November 17th, because they got to make a decision because everybody's waiting on it. Everybody. Especially the media partners. You don't want to get them more upset than you already got them. I'm sure George Kliavkoff is on the phone saying, come on, get this, figure it out. Block them. Or if you don't block them, penalize them or do whatever you have to, but we got to get it done now. Because he's got media partners ready they want to make a deal. They made the deal with the Big 12. The number's been set. ESPN knows the number they want to offer the Pac-12. Amazon's probably come up with a number, right? So, okay, so we're going to find out soon. We're going to cover this story each and every day these next 2 weeks, so stick with us here at Peek Around the Corner. Daniel, I think one permanent conference rival should be the norm. Daniel, coming in with an elbow drop on Iowa, Minnesota, Wisconsin. These schools that want more than one rival. Daniel's a good reason why there might be this huge, big compromise within the Big Ten. Don't think it's going to be one permanent conference rival, but maybe it's not going to be three either. Maybe each school will have its own list of permanent rival games, maybe 1 through 3, and they all say, that's fine, let's do this for the next 6 years. It's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy. I don't think any other conference is going to do that. But again, when you have a big old conference, you need a compromise. This is a crazy compromise. But Scott Docterman has talked about this at The Athletic. He's talked about Gary Barta talking about this at the University of Iowa. Because, Iowa wants 3 permanent rival games. So does Minnesota. So does Wisconsin. So does Nebraska. Many schools just want 1 or 2, especially out east. Penn State would go with 0 if they had their choice. Looks like they can't come to a decision, so the great compromise looks like it's in play. Tony, I think you need at least 2 rivals, if not 3. See, we can't even come to a decision here at the Peek Around the Corner chat board. In the chat, in the message. We can't come to it. So the Big Ten presidents, athletic directors, I think they're having I don't think they can come to a number. I think everyone's going to kind of choose what number of rivals they want. Of course, everyone has to buy in, right? Everybody, I think it's wild. I think it's going to be crazy. And who knows when they're going to come up with this decision? Again, do they even have UCLA in 2024? Everyone's waiting on the UC Board of Regents. Silly decision coming between November 15th and 17th in San Francisco. Everyone's waiting on it. Okay. Sean, biggest complaint about expansion is the loss of rivals. With 16 schools, I like 3 rivals in 6 rotating schools every year. That's correct, Sean. But I think what, like Daniel's saying, and I know Penn State fans say all the time, is we don't have 3 rivals in the Big Ten. And USC is not going to have 3 true rivals. And UCLA won't have 3 true rivals. And Maryland doesn't have 3 true rivals. And Rutgers. So instead of just making it up and saying, okay, these are your 3 permanent rivals, da-da-da. I think what they're focusing on now is what are the schools' true rivals? Let's play those games. And then let the other schools not have 3 permanent rivals, and they get more rotational games, more schools rotating through their schedule. And let's just go as is for the next 6 years and see how it plays out. I mean, would Penn State really? I think what they're trying to get consensus, and they can't get it. They can't get it with 3 permanent rival schedule, 2 permanent rivals, or 1 permanent rival. I think what Ohio State, for example, Ohio State Buckeyes, they would have 1 rival, Michigan. I don't think they would, if they could do it, if this big compromise comes to pass, I think Ohio State would have 1 permanent rival game. And I think everyone would have at least 1, because you want that last game of the season to be a permanent rival game. So I think Penn State would be with Michigan State. Ohio State would be with Michigan. Northwestern, Illinois. Purdue, Indiana. Minnesota, Wisconsin. Nebraska, Iowa. USC, UCLA. Maryland, Rutgers. I don't know if I missed any. But, so you would have one. And then some schools would have two, some schools would have three. I think that's what's going to happen. It's nice. It's all nice. It's all, you can put a nice bow on it, right? With 3 permanent rivals, 6 rotational teams. You could, very easy to do. Everybody plays each other twice in 4 years. But it doesn't seem they can get it passed. Big Ten can't get it passed. Look, this is just one of the many issues that's going to appear. These larger and larger conferences, SEC is going to have the same challenge. Look how long they've been talking about their schedule for 2025 when Oklahoma and Texas comes into the league. They can't even get consensus on how many conference games they should have. They have 8 right now. Half the conference wants to go to 9. The other half wants to stay at 8. So ACC has the same problem. Half the conference wants to go to 9, while the 7 of them want to go to 9, the other 7 want to stay at 8. Even if it's more money for them from ESPN and they need more money to go up another conference game, to go to 9, they still can't agree. It's crazy. It's crazy. Realignment never sleeps. Remember that. 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 4 years from now, 5 years from now. Realignment never sleeps. Tony, rumor has it that Bill Walton has not spoken to you. Bill Walton has not spoken to me. You'd be surprised who has talked to me. But Bill Walton has never spoken to me. And he refuses to speak with me. Like I said in that episode, I've got all the respect in the world for Bill Walton. Of course, he should state his opinion. My goodness, of course. If he doesn't want UCLA to move to the Big Ten, he should state it. The only thing I pointed out that caused a little bit of ruffles is that Bill Walton, when he brought up George Kliavkoff's talking points that were not accurate, that UCLA wouldn't make more money joining the Big Ten. But Bill Walton brought up some really good points, accurate points about the health of the student athletes with all the traveling. I think if George Kliavkoff would have just stuck with that message, because more than half the Big Ten agrees with George Kliavkoff, agrees with Bill Walton on the traveling issue. But when they start expanding their message and saying that UCLA won't make more money if they join the Big Ten, that kind of, it hurts their credibility, hurts their argument. But Bill Walton made a great argument. He wrote that part of the column in his own words. Why UCLA join the Big Ten would hurt the student athletes. And this is just the start, ladies and gentlemen. This is just the start of this narrative building. And it's going to build more and more and more. UCLA and USC haven't even joined the conference yet, the Big Ten Conference. And they won't until 2024. And yet this narrative is going to be built. It's tough on the student athletes. And I agree. That's why when the June 30th announcement came that USC and UCLA were going to join the Big Ten. And remember, we broke that USC was talking to Big Ten on March 31st. July 1st, we said these were the targets of further expansion. Oregon, Washington, Stanford, Notre Dame. Right away, we said it. We said because we were getting bombarded. We were just getting inundated with intel. We still do, by the way. This is what the Big Ten, this is what Kevin Warren wanted to do. And the number one reason was the travel issue. They wanted the Western wing in the Big Ten. Number two, people don't talk about this, but the second reason is because they wanted to make sure they dominated that market space, that Pacific Coast market space for decades on out. They wanted Washington, Oregon. The Big Ten presidents wanted Stanford. They wanted Notre Dame to grease the skids for Stanford entry into the Big Ten. So this narrative is going to get built, and it's going to be a headache. It's going to be a constant headache for Kevin Warren. And I don't think there's a solution outside of expansion. I know we talk about these scheduling pods. I can't wait till we actually see what this is all about. Like having UCLA and USC go to Nebraska to play baseball with Nebraska, Minnesota, Iowa, and throw in Purdue. Let's say 6 teams go to Nebraska for a weekend and they play each other a bunch of times. Okay, I suppose that would work once in a while. But now you're losing home events at USC, UCLA, and those other schools, baseball, home games. And you do that scheduling pod with gymnastics, volleyball. I mean, is that really going to work? And we talked about this in other episodes. If the Big Ten would have just added, let's say, Oregon and Washington, the scheduling ramifications, that would have eased traveling so much. I know it doesn't sound like reality. If you just say, oh, you're just going to add 2 more Pacific Coast schools, that doesn't really help. Oh, it does. It does. You regionalize those non-revenue sports, Olympic sports. You peel off those 6 Midwest schools with those, or 5 of those Midwest schools, the westernmost schools like Nebraska, Iowa, Minnesota. You peel those off, you play them with UCLA, USC, Oregon, and Washington, and the travel gets cut down immensely for those non-revenue Olympic sports. But it didn't happen. Not yet. Not yet. Let's get back to your questions. Chris S., thank you. Thank you for joining us. I think this pertains to if the University of California Board of Regents block UCLA, the Big Ten should invite Kansas. Hey, Kansas is very highly thought of. That's always been the case. Always been the case. Huge basketball brand. We're talking huge. I don't think everyone knows Kansas is a huge basketball brand. But the intensity of that fan base, and it goes across that whole area down Mid-South. What Kansas Jayhawk fans, they go to the events. That's why they have the basketball tournaments down, the Big 12 championships tournaments. You know, it's a possibility. It doesn't really help with the traveling aspect. I think Kansas is a potential add-on years down the road. Years down the road. Not right now. But Kansas, man. Look what they're doing with their football facilities. They're putting millions and hundreds of millions of dollars in their football facility, which they needed to do. They're doing everything right down in Kansas. Keep Lance Leopold. Brilliant coach. Brilliant coach. Whitewater, Wisconsin. Buffalo. Now to Kansas. Look what he's doing. Unbelievable. Daniel. I would go to DEF CON 5 pretty fast. LOL. Yes, I know you would, Daniel. You are a DEF CON 5 sort of guy. Sean Crowley, thank you for joining us this evening. Appreciate it. Stop the insanity, Sean says. And greed. Everyone stay where they belong. I blame Boston College. They started all this stuff by going somewhere it never made sense. Same with Pitt and Syracuse. Wow, that's an interesting statement from Sean Crowley. I like that. I like that. I like that. I don't necessarily agree with that statement, but I like the out-of-the-box statement here in the chat room. Yes, Boston College. They all left that Big East. They went to the ACC. I think that's what Sean's talking about. I think he's sort of being kind of funny talking about how that started it all. It started way before Boston College. It would still be going on without Boston College making that move. Pretty interesting comment. Thank you, Sean. Make more comments, please. Martex, I'd prefer UW, Wisconsin, or Stanford. Better airport access than Eugene. Stanford is also another Notre Dame rival. Market X, or is it Market X? If the Big Ten knew that getting Stanford would bring in Notre Dame, they would do it in a heartbeat. Other than that, I think Washington, Oregon are above Stanford. I think Big Ten is looking more seriously at Washington, Oregon in the future than Stanford. The Big Ten presidents want Stanford. There's no question about it. We got that intel. We've talked about it many times. No doubt about it. But as we stand right now, I think Oregon and Washington are above Stanford in the overall value of what the Big Ten would look at. If UCLA gets blocked, there's a lot of things you got to look at, right? But it's one of those three schools that would be School 16. Tony, any news on Notre Dame and their new TV deal? Could that be an issue in any way for Stanford? No news on Notre Dame. No news at all. You'd think we'd be hearing something about it, right? SBJ, Sports Business Journal, had many reports. Not many. A few reports. Notre Dame looks like they could get $60 million a year from NBC, right? Well, we haven't heard anything since. Notre Dame's current deal with NBC runs until 2025. So it's not like they have to sign a deal now. But you would think if Notre Dame, the interesting question is, if Notre Dame could get that new deal started earlier with NBC, they would take it probably, right? But maybe NBC doesn't want to do it yet. Maybe there isn't really a deal to be signed yet. Very interesting, a story that we're all going to be hanging on to, watching. Opie, nice to see you again, sir. Appreciate ya. A question on another conference. Does anyone know if the Big 12 has signed the grant of rights yet? I don't think the Big 12 has signed. I don't think those schools have signed any deal yet. I mean, I think it's agreed upon. I don't think anyone has put pen to paper. And I say that, let me back up. Maybe they have signed the deal, maybe they haven't, but I don't believe they've signed the grant of rights, to answer your question. And the reason I say that is, I saw a report, I think it was West Virginia University was having a Board of Regents meeting November 11th. Someone check on that. Put it in the comments section. Let me know if I'm wrong. I do think there's a Board of Regents meeting happening November 11th, West Virginia, and they're going to be talking about the grant of rights, the new grant of rights that they will need to sign. So I do not believe the Big 12, I don't believe all the schools have signed it yet. It's probably a formality. You would think they would agree with the grant of rights and how that's going to be laid out before they agree with, right, the media terms. I think that all goes hand in hand. But to answer your question, I do not believe the GOR has been signed as of yet. Sean Crowley, Keith Jackson, and Bino Cook are rolling in their graves. Good one. Good one. Yes, they probably are. They probably are. Mark Tex, as a Buckeye, I think we need to play Michigan and Penn State every year. Hell, I wish we could go back to playing Illinois every year. Yeah, back in the day, Ohio State and Illinois had a good rivalry. That probably surprised a lot of people, but that is true. Again, right, you have to look at the equities of the schedules too, right? You're not going to have the Buckeyes have... I don't think Penn State would be part of... Let me backtrack. if you're going to have this big compromise in the Big Ten to get through the scheduling, where some schools will have one rival, some schools will have three rivals. If you have more than one rival, like Ohio State's not going to have Michigan and Penn State as their two rivals, while Wisconsin has Iowa and Minnesota as their two rivals. It's just too much of an advantage to Wisconsin. I'm not trying to rip on Iowa and Minnesota, my beloved Gophers, but you gotta have some sort of competitive balance in these schedules. And it's kind of easy to do when each of them has three permanent rivals, right? It's kind of easy to do that. Two permanent rivals would be blue blood helmet school teams, and one of them would be a weaker Big Ten school historically. But if you're saying one permanent rival, and some schools are going to have three permanent rivals, I just think that Ohio State would balk at the idea of having two helmet school rival games. I don't know. You could go so many different ways with this. They're having a hard time coming to a decision, and that's why the big compromise is in play. Daniel, I just have to say that Dennis Dodd said the Big Ten would add California, Stanford, Oregon, and Washington for around $100 million. That's dilutive, as each school would only bring in about $25 million each. Yes, 4 of those schools would dilute the money. I know that's what Dennis Dodd reported, and he brought up this School of California. I know Brett McMurphy has brought up the School of California being one of the targets. We at Peek Around the Corner never got any intel, no steam on the University of California. Dennis Dodd in that same report said the Big Ten was still pursuing this, but we got the word on October 12th. Not only did Kevin Warren say it public, we got it word, we put it out there, that Big Ten was not expanding at this time. And that was in that decision window of August 15th and October 15th that we reported in July. So we don't think anything's happening now. But again, UCLA and this decision of the University of California Board of Regents between 15th and 17th, November 15th and 17th, it could just rock the boat. Who knows what the ramifications are? We're going to have to get right back into it, Daniel. Right back into it. If UCLA is blocked or penalized to the point where they can't make the move, we're going to have to go right back into all this discussion. And maybe you're right, Daniel. Maybe you're right. Sean Crowley, Rutgers should be back in the Atlantic 10. Well, maybe they should, but they won't be. They won't be. I think we all know that. They will not be. They do bring in a big population center into the Big Ten. They do bring in Eastern media exposure out east. There's a lot of Big Ten alumni out there in New Jersey. A lot of people, alumni from the University of Michigan. So, they're going to be part of the Big Ten for the next 100 years, right? We always hear that these are 100-year decisions. But then again, realignment never sleeps. Daniel, Big Ten needs to go to 11-game conference schedule. Playing out of conference is giving money to the other conferences when we play there. Interesting comment from Daniel. I do not think, we at Peek Around the Corner do not believe Big Ten will go from 9 conference games to 10 conference games until at least the SEC goes from 8 games to 9 games. When SEC makes it official that they're going from 8 conference football games to 9, then Big Ten will look at going to 10. But not before that. You're not going to have the Big Ten go from 9 to 10 conference games while the SEC starts at 8. We're going into the world of the expanded college football playoffs with 12 teams, 6 at large. You make more money as a conference when more teams go into the playoffs. You make more money as individual schools if your school goes to the playoffs. So you're going to have these 6 at large bids. So there's no way the Big Ten's going to 10 games while the SEC sits at 8. And then we have this whole huge big issue that we haven't talked tonight. We've talked about it in other episodes. The decision has to be made, and this is another decision that has to be made real soon. If we want to see the college football playoffs start in 2024, the decision on how to distribute the conference football playoff revenue, how does it get distributed, plays a big part in everything we're talking about tonight. So that decision has to be made. The current college football playoff system is, the distribution is, and I think it's about $470 million a year that gets distributed. 80% of that goes to the Power 5 conferences. 20% of that goes to the G5 conferences. Out of that 80% that goes to the Power 5 conference, it gets distributed evenly to those 5 Power 5 conferences. Not dependent on the number of teams that are in each of those conferences. And then you have the extra millions of dollars that go, like $6 million to each school that makes it to the playoffs. In the new distribution model, is it going to be evenly distributed among the Power 5 schools, regardless of the number of teams in the conference? I don't think it will be. But it's a huge question that has to be decided on before they can have the college football playoffs. And if it's going to be for 2024, this decision on how it's going to be distributed has to be made soon. Because let's pretend, for the sake of discussion, the new college football playoff revenue, let's say it's $2.2 billion per year. 80% of that is like $1.7 billion that go to each Power 5 school. And then it's like, I don't know, what is it, $356 million or something goes to each conference. Power 5 conference. And then if you break it down even further, for the Pac-10 school, Pac-12 schools, if there's 10 schools, that would be a payout of $35 million each for each schools, just for the conference football playoff revenue distribution. And only $22 million for each SEC school, because there's 16 schools in those conferences. Is that how it's going to be? Is the SEC and the Big Ten really going to vote? Are they really going to settle for that same distribution model? I don't believe so. And if they don't, what are they going to exactly push for the new distribution model, for the playoff system? I don't know. I don't know what's going to come of that either. Lots of questions. Lots of drama playing behind the scenes. And each and every day I am shocked that the national reporters are not talking about the big elephant in the room, the conference college football expanded playoff distribution model. What is it going to look like starting in 2024, whenever they can get this thing going? What is it going to look like? Because they need to get a consensus on it. The 10 FBS conferences and Notre Dame, what is it going to look like? And that decision alone of what it's going to look like affects everything. Affects San Diego State to be able to get to the Pac-12, the Big 12. It affects, does the Pac-12 even want to add 11th to 12th school? Do the Big 10 Big 12 even want to grab the Four Corners schools? It affects so many different decisions. It might even affect Kevin Warren's decision to go to a 17th and 18th school, or 19th or 20th school. What if you get more money depending on how many schools you have in your conference? Who knows? We don't know. I do know this, or at least I have a very strong opinion of this. SEC and Big Ten are going to do everything they possibly can. Everything they possibly can. Not to agree with the same distribution model that's going on right now. To have it split evenly among those 5 conferences. Anyways, get back to the questions. Eisman 57. The Florida Rosedale is arguably the most famous traveling trophy in all of college football. The Iowa versus Minnesota rivalry ain't going nowhere. It really isn't. And neither is the Minnesota-Wisconsin rivalry. Neither is the Iowa-Wisconsin rivalry. That's why I think this big compromise is going to happen. The great big compromise within the Big Ten, where you're not going to have the same amount of permanent rival games within the entire division, within the entire conference. It's going to be wild. It's going to be wild, but I think that's what's going to happen. I think that's what's going to happen. Tony, 11 game. The Gophers need a few easy non-conference games. Yeah. Minnesota will vote against the 11 Big Ten conference games. I can guarantee you that. Bob Dolan, nice to see you in the house. If UCLA gets blocked of the Big Ten, just sit at 15 teams. Other teams not named UCLA might not be additive money-wise. Great question. Great question. Outstanding question. Could the Big Ten just sit at 15 teams? Well, let's look at it. What would that mean? Big Ten football. Last weekend of the season. Everyone plays their conference, their rival team, right? Indiana, Purdue, Michigan State, Penn State, Wisconsin, Minnesota, Iowa, Nebraska, Maryland, Rutgers. USC plays who? What would be their last weekend game? November 25th, third week in November. Of course, that's going to be moved. I think that's going to be bumped up a week. Like that last game of the season, I think is going to be played about November 18th. A week before Thanksgiving, once the expanded playoffs start. Who would be USC's rival game? Notre Dame? Could they get Notre Dame on the schedule to end the season? Independent Notre Dame end the season every year? Would a 15-team work? 15-school work? Possibly. But again, now you're really leaving USC home on an island. I would bet against it. I just don't see Kevin Warren, man. This guy, this cat, he's an expansionist. We put out a tweet in 2021. BTM and his associates. We put out a tweet in 2021. We followed it up with a few more tweets saying, Kevin Warren's an expansionist. Kevin Warren is an expansionist. He wanted to expand the country, right? The conference. He wants to expand the hockey conference, men's hockey. He wants to form a true Big Ten women's hockey conference. We're not quite there yet. That's what he wants to do. He would just sit there and not grab a 16th school if UCLA gets blocked. I don't see it. I just don't see it in him. I think he'd go back to Pac-12 country. I really do. Is it a possibility, Bob? Good question. I would say no. I think Kevin Warren would definitely go with the 16 school. 5 bits of broken chair trophy is the best. That's from Market Text. That's between Nebraska and Minnesota. It's a very young trophy. It doesn't have nearly the legitimacy of the Axe or the Pig of Rosedale. But it's a nice trophy. It's a charity trophy. Husker fans and Gopher fans donate to a charity. I think it was over $100,000 this year. And again, for the 4th year in a row, the Broken Chair Trophy stays in Minneapolis as the Gophers defeat the Cornhuskers. Lewis Pop, nice to see you again, sir. I appreciate you coming in. The Little Brown Jug, the trophy game between Michigan and Minnesota. I think that's a lot more important to Gopher fans than Wolverine fans. But yeah, it's a big one. Opie, I wonder if they stop UCLA, will it speed up the realignment? Again, I believe, Peek Around the Corner believes if UCLA gets blocked or if they get penalized to the point where it doesn't do them any good to move to the Big Ten, if that toll tax is so high, I think Kevin Warren goes for a 16th school in Pac-12 country. Oregon, Washington, Stanford. That's our position at Peek Around the Corner. Tony, the Axe. David Hall. Nice to see you. Appreciate you coming in. I was shocked to see how little research Oregon actually does. Would the Big Ten presidents actually accept them? I think they would. Absolutely, I think they would. Would they accept them over Stanford? Would they accept them over Washington? That's the question. But Oregon is being undervalued by so many people out there. That's a big mistake. Again, Big Ten presidents, I shouldn't say Big Ten presidents. Big Ten officials met with Oregon lawyers and consultants representing Oregon. They met with Washington. And I'll throw this in there. Big Ten officials met with Oregon and Washington at 2 different cities, 2 different locations, 2 different days. So there was interest. There still is interest. Of course there's interest. Big Ten met with Rutgers years before Rutgers was invited to the Big Ten. Same with Nebraska. The whole story, I've said this story on episodes before, the whole story of Michigan State getting into the Big Ten, University of Pittsburgh trying to get into the Big Ten in the 50s and the 60s. Sometimes a school has to knock on that door many different times before they get in. Yes, there's great interest for University of Oregon. They don't have the research as Washington does. That's not even comparable. It's not even close. But Oregon often gets lowballed by many people on Twitter and message boards. I can tell you, Oregon, Big Ten's very interested in Oregon. Right now, they can't swing it. Internally, they can't swing it. Economically, they couldn't get the deal done. But there's great interest years down the road. Daniel, Fort Wayne is beating Michigan. Basketball has begun tonight. I hope the Gophers are winning. The Gophers are predicted, what? Men's basketball, 13th out of 14 schools. 12 out of 14 schools. Don't know. I don't think they're predicted last. I think that's Nebraska's spot. Juan Howard better not touch Fort Wayne's coach. Then it's all over for him. And you can officially put the Fab Five away for good. Tony Illibuk is the name of the trophy, I think. Illinois and Ohio State. Yes, that's a long-time rivalry for those who don't know much about Big Ten history. Big Ten, that's a big rivalry. Illinois and Ohio State. Don't think it's going to be a rival game in this big compromise, right? This new Big Ten compromise scheduling that I think is going to happen. I think it's going to happen. Eisman, 57. I love seeing Oregon in the Big Ten, but their annual research budget is ridiculously small. Per Tony Outmore, Nebraska spends the least in the Big Ten on research with $320 million. Oregon spends only $114 million. That is very true. Oregon is be the lowest research university of all the Big Ten schools if they were admitted. But then again, Nebraska was admitted when they were the lowest research schools, expenditures, research money. But Oregon there is interest. There is definite interest from the Big Ten. Absolutely. Just let me clean up the chat here. Okay. Tony, that's a lot of money. Eisman, yes, it is. Sean, then it's settled. Washington. I don't think we're going to settle it here. Each of those schools Washington, Oregon, and Stanford would have a very good argument to make if UCLA happens to get blocked or happens to get penalized to the point where they get crippled and they can't go to the Big Ten. That's being decided on in the middle of November in San Francisco. Each of those schools. Again, Oregon's getting lowballed in our chat room. Same thing that happens in the message boards and on Twitter. But Oregon's brand is huge. Big money. They're a brand multiplier when their sports play other team sports. Don't underestimate Oregon. Their candidacy to get to the Big Ten. Tony, does everyone think Washington and Oregon leave for the Big by themselves? I think they would like to go together. Just my opinion. I think they would love to go together. But as they communicated with the Big Ten, they did it separately. Those meetings happen separately. Just like USC and UCLA, they did it separately. They met with, talked with the Big Ten. They didn't even know each other were talking to the Big Ten. Unlike the Texas and Oklahoma situation where they both called the big SEC together on the same phone call with Greg Sankey. I think the Big Ten, this is Market Text, I think the Big Ten is a lifeboat and UW Oregon are not going to wait to let the women and children board first. Yeah, who's ever, it's all independent. It's all looking out for yourself. If Oregon has to elbow Washington out of the way, or Washington has to elbow Oregon out of the way, or if Stanford has to elbow both of them out of the way, they will do so. Sean, the big compromise still gives some schools advantages or disadvantages based on how good those rivals happen to be. You bring up a great point, Sean. And that's what I was trying to say. I don't think Ohio State would have, if they're going to have two permanent rivals, they're not going to be two big-time schools, helmet schools, like Penn State and Ohio State. It'd just be one of them. I mean, if Ohio State was going to have two rivals, it would be either Michigan or Penn State. And of course, it'd be Michigan. Don't think there'd be two helmet schools listed. Eisman 57, thank you for your generosity. I appreciate you, sir. You're helping to keep the lights on at the Gopher by the Grace of God Studios, even though you're an Iowa Hawkeye. Another great stream, Greg. I really appreciate your efforts. Thank you, sir. I really appreciate you. Thank you so very much. Those donations help us keep going. Appreciate you all. Again, there's people send money, Venmo and PayPal, if that's how you want to do it. But again, Eisman, thank you very much. I know Eisman 57 put a request in that I should sing the song of the Iowa Hawkeyes fight song if the Hawkeyes beat the Gophers. However, sing the song. If a person puts a request in for me to sing a song, if their team beats a top 10 team, if it happens, I do so. But it has to be a top 10 team. And of course, the Gophers are not a top 10 team. But because Eisman put a donation into the channel, if the Iowa Hawkeyes defeat the Gophers 2 weeks from now, I will sing the Iowa Hawkeyes fight song here at Peek Around the Corner. In our watch party show Saturday, Gophers versus the Cornhuskers, my 92-year-old father, Jerry, put in a request in through one of my sisters as he's watching the show. He said if the Gophers ever do score a touchdown in this game, because they were shut out in the first half, if they do score a touchdown, Greg, would you please sing Kenny Rogers, the Gambler? The request was made. I sang the song. So, and I also sang Rocky Top. So, Eisman, if you make a donation to the show, I will also sing a song that you request on a later show. Eisman, thank you so much for the donation. I will sing the Iowa Hawkeyes fight song if they beat the Gophers. So that's another reason why the Minnesota Golden Gophers have to finally beat the Iowa Hawkeyes again. Please, what is it? 5-6 years in a row that the Hawkeyes have beaten the Gophers. It's got to stop now. It's got to stop now. It's got to stop now. Boo. Boo, Hawkeyes. All right, we got to get off Iowa Hawkeyes Gopher talk before everyone leaves. Matthew Carlson says, no, Michigan loves that game trophy too. I'm sure they do. Long time rivalry, Michigan and Minnesota. When you have a conference that's been together for so long, since 1896, the Gophers, Minnesota is one of the 6 original schools. You have these long-term rivalries. Wisconsin and Minnesota for the Axe. Wisconsin and Minnesota. There's no 2 teams in all of college football at any level have played each other more than Wisconsin and Minnesota. So you have these long-time rivalries. You have these old-time trophy games. The fan bases grow up on them. It gets infectious. So yes, you're right, Matthew. The Little Brown Jug is big time. Tony, great backstory on the Jug. Maybe the best of all the trophy games. Yes, there is. I think it has to do with there was a jug. I don't know what year it was, Tony. Let me know the year. But Michigan drank a jug of water that the Minnesota Gophers gave them in a game in Minneapolis. I think the Wolverines thought it was poison or something like that. Something. I don't know. Let me tell the story, Tony, in the comment section if you have any time. But there's a big old conspiracy behind it, like most of these trophy games are. So now there's the Little Brown Jug trophy that they go back and forth. David Hall, the old brass spittoon. Yes, sir. Cat Sailor. Thank you for joining here at Peek Around the Corner. Marketex, USC comes whether UCLA does or not, because they're a private school unbeholden to any California State Board of Regents. Absolutely true, Cat Sailor. So is Stanford. They're a private school. So if Big Ten wanted to go back to California and get that second school, it'd be Stanford. It would definitely be Stanford. Not University of California, Berkeley. Tony, what is the Northwestern Illinois Trophy called? It looks like Abe Lincoln's hat. Don't know. Don't remember what that's called. Tony, dang, I forgot. We could have heard the Notre Dame fight song tonight. Yes, Tony put a request in for me to sing Notre Dame if they beat top 10 Clemson, but then he took it back. So I do not have to sing Notre Dame's fight song tonight. Sean, eventually, Greg is going to become a good singer, getting lots of practice. I very much doubt that, Sean. I don't think that's going to happen, but I'm willing to sing. I'm willing to embarrass myself in front of the country. If you put a request in, and if your team defeats a top 10 school, or if you donate to the channel, I will also sing your requested song in the next live show. Because, I need time to practice the song, of course. I need to vocalize. I need to learn the lyrics. I need to somehow stay in key. So yes, 2 ways I sing your song. 1, if you request it and your team beats a top 10 team. Or 2, if you make a money donation to the channel to help us keep the lights on, I do that as well. Medea Flugar, the moderator, the little general, says, thanks for your support to the channel. Your contribution means a lot. Thank you, Eisman57, once again. And thank you to you all who smashed that like button. Please smash that like button. It helps with the algorithms with YouTube so very much. I know you guys all do it. Thank you so very much. Luis Carlos Diaz. Let's go, San Diego State. Let's go. Let's go. it done. It could happen. I do not think Luis Carlos Diaz, if you missed the first half of the show, don't think it's going to happen this week for multiple reasons. Don't think they're going to get that Pac-12 invite this week, but they're doing the dance with the Pac-12. The reason why I don't think they're going to get that invitation this week, as Dan Patrick's sources have said, is because I think the Pac-12 is going to nail down their new media contract first. They got to get this UCLA thing settled. So there's a domino effect to all this stuff. I don't think San Diego State is at the top of that domino effect. But the perfect storm is brewing for San Diego State. And Luis, if you miss our episode previous, you find it in the YouTube channel, Peek Around the Corner. There's episodes, us talking about San Diego State. I think the perfect storm is brewing for San Diego State. Sean, a true professional. Yes, a true singing professional. Yes, I got to practice. I got to stay on key somehow. Okay? It's very difficult. Very difficult for this big northern Minnesota accent as well. Luis Carlos Diaz, you're awesome, brother. I appreciate your work. Appreciate you, Luis, for coming in to the house. Appreciate all you guys. Tony, who's your top four, Greg? Who's my top four? Who's my top four? Let me get to that question next here. Hold on, Tony. Cat Sailor. California governor, grab him, gruesome, wants his cut before he agrees to let UCLA go to the Big Ten. So if they penalize UCLA, if they put the toll tax in UCLA, I mean, how much is it going to be? Really? I mean, is it going to be $5 million a year? Okay, if it's $5 million a year, UCLA's still moving to the Big Ten. $10 million a year, UCLA's still moving to the Big Ten. Remember, Governor Newsom, George Kliavkoff, both have, or I shouldn't say, let me back up. Not Governor Newsom, but George Kliavkoff and Bill Walton, but mainly George Kliavkoff, has said UCLA is not going to make more money going to the Big Ten because of these other expenses, travel, coaches' salaries. Now that's incorrect, but that's what George Kliavkoff says. So now, if my understanding is, if UCLA gets toll tax, if they get penalized for moving to the Big Ten, that means UCLA is going to make even less money. I mean, you know what? I've gone through this before. I don't see the reasoning behind cutting the legs out from UCLA. I really do not. I think it's just a bad way to do business. It's not going to help the University of California, Berkeley out. It's not going to improve their lot any better than it is now. And let me end with this. Tony, who's your top four, Greg? Number 1, Georgia. Number 2, Ohio State. I think those two are locks for tomorrow night. I have been debating this and debating this. I would go TCU number 3, Tennessee number 4. But I got to tell you, Oregon, USC, UCLA, LSU, they're getting close. They're right there. They are right there. I don't think Clemson has a pathway anymore. But Oregon, man, after they lost 49-3 to Georgia, I didn't think there was a chance. No one did. But there is, man. There is. They win the Pac-12. They can get to the college football playoffs. They can be a 4th seed and have that rematch with Georgia. It can happen. It can happen. All right. That's all I got for you this evening. Oh, Tony, what about Michigan? You know, I keep forgetting about Michigan. Sean, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, Tennessee. I keep forgetting about Michigan. Those 5 schools, Georgia, Ohio State, Michigan, TCU, Tennessee, and you got Oregon, USC, ready to come through the back door. Possibly LSU, a 2-loss LSU, SEC champion LSU. They'd be in the college football playoffs. Okay, that about does it for tonight. Been here for an hour and 38 minutes. Great live show. I appreciate all your support. Before you leave, smash that like button. Subscribe to our channel. Share this video with your family and friends. We're not going to be doing a live show tomorrow night, Tuesday night. I know we said we were going to do that every Tuesday, but tomorrow night, we're not going to do it. We're going to regroup, go back to the 2 weeks, a week, 8 days from now for the next Tuesday when we do a live show in real time for the college football expanded playoffs. But tomorrow night, we're not going to be doing a live show, but watch for a video and episode for tomorrow morning. From all of us at Peek Around the Corner, to all of you, until next time, please, you all take care of each other. Thank you so very much.